It's 5:47 in the morning when Maria hears the knock. She's 34 years old, a mother of two, and she's lived in the same small house outside Houston for almost 6 years. Her oldest daughter is getting ready for school. Her coffee is still too hot to drink. And then 3 sharp knocks hit the door, followed by a voice saying, "Police, open up." Maria's hands start shaking before she even reaches the doorknob. In the next 60 seconds, she is going to make a decision that could change the rest of her life, the lives of her children, and whether her family stays together or gets torn apart. And here's the terrifying part. Most people in Maria's exact position do not know what she is legally allowed to do right now. They don't know what rights protect them. They don't know that opening that door, even just a crack, even just to ask a question, can hand the government everything it needs. This is not just Maria's story. This could be your story, your neighbor's story, your coworker's story, or the story of someone you love. Because here's what's actually at stake when ICE shows up at a door. Any door in this country. It is not just paperwork. It is not just an inconvenience. We're talking about people being separated from their children with no warning. We're talking about people losing years of work, savings, businesses, and homes in a single afternoon. We're talking about families split across borders, sometimes for years, sometimes permanently. And in the most extreme cases, we're talking about people being detained for weeks or months, while their case works through a system that is slow, overwhelmed, and not built with mercy in mind. This is what's actually on the line, not a maybe, a real possibility every single day for millions of families across this country. So let me tell you who I am and why you should listen to the next 20 minutes like your life depends on it, because for some of you, it might. I'm an immigration attorney. I've spent years inside courtrooms, inside detention facilities, and inside living rooms just like Maria's, sitting across from families in the worst moment of their lives, trying to undo damage that, in many cases, never had to happen in the first place. And I want to be blunt with you. Almost everything I'm about to tell you, you were never supposed to hear. Not from a government office, not from the news, not from a Know Your Rights pamphlet stapled together in a waiting room somewhere. The system does not go out of its way to teach you your own rights, because rights you don't know about are rights you can't use. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's just how it works. Officers are trained extensively in what they're allowed to do. The average person is given almost nothing. That gap right there between what they know and what you know is exactly where families get hurt. Before I go any further, if this video has already grabbed your attention, hit subscribe right now, because I post real, accurate, plain language legal information just like this every single week. And the algorithm only shows this kind of content to people who are already following. This isn't about numbers for me. It's about making sure that when someone you love is standing at a door at 6 in the morning shaking like Maria was, they already know exactly what to do because somebody shared this video with them before that moment ever happened. So if you know even one person, a family member, a friend, an employee, a neighbor who this could ever apply to, send them this video right now before you even finish watching it. You can always come back. They might not get a second chance. Now let's get into it. These are the rights, the actual legal protections that almost nobody explains clearly. And I'm going to walk you through exactly what they mean, where they come from, and what to actually do with them. Number one, the single most important thing you need to understand is the difference between two pieces of paper that look almost identical but mean completely different things. One is called a judicial warrant. It's signed by an actual judge. It has a court's name and seal on it, and it gives officers the legal authority to enter your home. The other is called an administrative warrant, and it's something completely different. It's signed by an immigration official, not a judge, and it does not give anyone the legal right to come into your house without your permission. This distinction comes straight from the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures of your home. Courts have consistently held that this protection applies inside your home regardless of immigration status. A document like Form Y-200 or Form Y-205, which immigration officers commonly carry, is an administrative warrant. It is not the same as a judicial search warrant, and it does not authorize entry. Here's your action step. If someone says they're from ICE or any law enforcement agency and they want to come in, you do not have to open the door. You can ask them through the door without opening it to slide the warrant underneath so you can look at it. Check the bottom for a judge's signature and the name of a court. If it doesn't have both, you are not legally required to let them inside. The most common mistake people make here is opening the door first and asking questions second. Once that door is open, the situation changes immediately, sometimes in ways you can't undo. Number 2, you have the right to remain silent. I know you've heard that phrase 1,000 times from television shows, but most people don't realize it applies just as much in immigration encounters as it does in a criminal arrest. This comes from the Fifth Amendment, which protects you from being forced to give the government information that could be used against you. You are not required to answer questions about where you were born, how you entered the country, your immigration status, or anything else along those lines. You don't have to lie, and you should never lie, but you are also not required to volunteer information that could be used to build a case against you or your family. The practical action here is simple, but takes practice. If you're asked a question you don't want to answer, you can say clearly and calmly, "I am exercising my right to remain silent." That's it. You don't need to explain further, argue, or get defensive. The biggest mistake people make is feeling like silence looks suspicious, so they start talking just to fill the uncomfortable quiet. That instinct is completely understandable, but it can do real damage. Silence is not an admission of guilt. It is a constitutional right that exists specifically to protect you in exactly this kind of high-pressure moment. Number 3, your home itself is protected from search, even if officers are standing right outside it. This again traces back to the Fourth Amendment, and it's reinforced by basic constitutional protections that apply to everyone physically present in the United States, citizen or not. Officers cannot search your home, your bedrooms, your closets, or your belongings without either your clear and voluntary consent or a valid judicial warrant signed by a judge. And this matters because there's a difference between officers being allowed to stand on your porch and knock, which they generally can do, and officers being allowed to come inside and look through your home, which they generally cannot do without one of those two things. Your action step is this. If you do decide to step outside to talk, which is sometimes a strategic choice people make, close the door behind you. Stepping outside voluntarily is different from giving permission for someone to come inside. And if anyone asks to come in to just look around or just ask a few questions inside, you are allowed to say no. The common mistake here is assuming that because someone has a badge or a uniform, you're required to let them in. A badge does not override the Constitution. Authority and unrestricted permission are not the same thing, and understanding that difference is one of the most powerful pieces of protection you can carry into a moment like this. Number 4, you have the right to consult a lawyer before you answer questions or sign anything, and you have the right to remain silent until that lawyer is present. Now, I want to be precise here because there's a common misunderstanding. In immigration proceedings, which are civil, not criminal, the government is not required to provide you a free attorney the way it would in a criminal case. That protection comes from a different part of the law entirely, and it doesn't carry over the same way. But here's what does carry over. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, specifically the section dealing with removal proceedings, and under federal regulations that govern immigration court, you have the right to be represented by an attorney of your choosing at your own expense at every stage of the process. You also have the right to ask for a list of free or low-cost legal service providers in your area, and immigration authorities are required to be able to provide one. Your action step is simple. The moment you're in any kind of immigration encounter, whether at your door, in public, or in custody, say clearly, "I want to speak to a lawyer before I answer any questions." Then stop talking. If you already have a lawyer's number memorized or written down somewhere on your body, like in a wallet or sewn into a jacket pocket, even better. The mistake people make constantly is waiting until things get serious to think about a lawyer. By then, they may have already answered questions or signed something that makes the lawyer's job 10 times harder. Get the number now, while things are calm, not later, when they're not. Number 5, you are never required to sign anything you don't fully understand. And this might be the single most damaging mistake I see in my work over and over again. Here's why it matters so much. There are documents like a voluntary departure agreement under the Immigration and Nationality Act, or what's called a stipulated removal order under federal immigration regulations, that can permanently waive your right to a hearing in front of a judge. Once signed, undoing that decision can be extremely difficult, sometimes nearly impossible, and officers are not required to explain every consequence of a document before asking you to sign it. They may simply say, "Sign here," and many people do, out of fear, confusion, or a desperate hope that cooperating will make things easier. Sometimes it does, often it doesn't, and the signature becomes the entire case against them. Your action step is this. If anyone asks you to sign a document, you are allowed to say, "I do not understand this document, and I want to speak to a lawyer before I sign anything." You can ask for time. You can ask for an interpreter if English isn't your first language, since you have the right to understand exactly what you're agreeing to. A signature given under pressure, without understanding, is still a signature, and the law generally treats it as valid even if you didn't fully grasp what it meant. That's exactly why this step matters so much. Slow down. Read or have someone read to you before your hand ever touches a pen. Number 6, you have the right to ask whether you are being detained or whether you are free to leave. And the answer to that question changes everything about how you should respond. This comes from a long line of constitutional law dealing with the difference between a voluntary, consensual conversation and an actual detention. Courts have repeatedly drawn a clear line here. If you are simply free to walk away, the encounter is considered consensual, and you're not obligated to answer questions or stay. But if you are not free to leave, that's a different legal category entirely, and different protections kick in, including the requirement that any stop be based on specific articulable facts, not just a hunch or a guess. This principle has been reinforced in immigration-specific contexts by federal courts, which have made clear that officers generally need individualized reasonable suspicion before they can detain someone for an immigration check, not just a general assumption based on appearance, language, or location. Your action step is to ask directly and calmly, "Am I being detained or am I free to go?" If you're told you're free to go, you can calmly walk away, and you don't have to answer further questions on your way out. If you're told you're being detained, that's the moment to fall back on everything we just covered. Stay silent beyond identifying basic information if asked, ask for a lawyer, and do not sign anything. The mistake people make here is never asking the question at all. They assume they're stuck, when sometimes legally they're not. And on the flip side, some people assume they can simply leave when they've actually been lawfully detained, which can create an entirely separate problem. Asking the question clearly every time removes the guesswork and puts you back in control of how you respond. I also want to add one more layer here, because this affects entire households, not just the person who answers the door. Every single right we just walked through applies to every person in your home, including children, including elderly parents, including anyone visiting that day. Nobody can be forced to answer questions about another family member's immigration status, where they were born, or how they entered the country. A child does not have to answer questions about their parents, and a parent does not have to answer questions about a child, a spouse, a roommate, or anyone else living under that roof. This matters because sometimes pressure gets applied to whoever seems most willing to talk, often the person who feels caught off guard or wants to be cooperative and polite. But cooperation and self-protection are not the same thing, and you can be calm, respectful, and silent, all three at the exact same time. That combination, staying polite while saying nothing incriminating, is honestly one of the most underrated skills in moments like this. And it's something every single person in a household should understand, not just whoever happens to answer the door that morning. Let's bring all of this together, because I know that was a lot, and in a real moment, under real pressure, your brain is not going to remember a 20-minute lecture. It's going to remember a feeling and a few short phrases. So here's the short version, the version I want living in the back of your mind permanently. 1. Never open the door unless you see a warrant signed by an actual judge slid underneath it, not just any badge or any paper waved at you through a window. 2. You can stay silent, and you should, calmly and without apology, because silence is a right, not a confession. 3. Your home cannot be searched without your clear consent or that same judicial warrant, so stepping outside and closing the door behind you is not the same as inviting anyone in. 4. Ask for a lawyer immediately, out loud, clearly, and then stop answering questions until that lawyer is involved. 5. Do not sign anything you don't fully understand, ever, no matter how much pressure you feel in that moment, because a signature can close doors that a conversation never could. And 6. Ask directly whether you're being detained or free to go, because that one question tells you exactly which set of protections applies to you right now. 6 rights, 6 tools, all of them free, all of them already yours, whether anyone ever told you about them or not. Now let's go back to Maria, standing at her door at 5:47 in the morning, coffee too hot to drink, 3 knocks still echoing in her ears. In the version of that morning where nobody ever taught her any of this, she opens the door because the voice outside sounds official and she's scared not to. She answers questions because staying quiet feels rude, even suspicious. Maybe she even signs something because someone tells her it will make things easier. And in that moment, easier sounds like exactly what she needs. That version of the story can end with her children coming home from school to an empty house, with months of confusion, with a case that becomes harder to fix specifically because of what happened in those first 60 seconds. But here's the other version, the one I want for her and the one I want for you. In this version, Maria hears the knock, and instead of panic taking over completely, one steady thought rises above it. She doesn't open the door. She calls out calm but firm, asking whoever is outside to slide identification and any warrant underneath the door. She sees there's no judge's signature anywhere on it. She says clearly that she is choosing to remain silent and that she wants to speak with a lawyer before answering anything further. Her hands are still shaking because of course they are. This is terrifying no matter how prepared you are. But underneath the fear, she knows exactly what she's allowed to do, and that knowledge changes the entire shape of that morning. It doesn't erase her fear, it gives her something steadier to hold on to in the middle of it. That's the difference this video can make. Not removing the fear completely, because that's not realistic, but giving you something solid to stand on while you feel it. This is exactly why I made this video, and it's exactly why I need you to do one specific thing before you close this tab or scroll to the next video. Think of one person right now, just one, who this could ever apply to. Maybe it's someone in your own family. Maybe it's a coworker you've never even discussed this with. Maybe it's someone you barely know, but who crossed your mind the second I started talking about this. Send them this video right now, today, not eventually, not when I remember later. The entire point of this information is that it has to already be in someone's head before that knock happens, because there is no time to look any of this up once it's actually happening. Nobody calmly pulls out their phone to research constitutional law while officers are standing at their door. The learning has to happen now, in a quiet moment like this one, so that it's already there, waiting when the quiet moment ends. If this video helped you understand even one thing you didn't know 30 minutes ago, that's exactly why I do this. And sharing it costs you nothing but a few seconds, while it might save someone else everything. Before you go, I want you thinking about something, because knowing your rights at the door is only step one. What happens after that if someone is actually detained? What rights exist once you're no longer standing in your own home, but sitting somewhere you didn't choose to be, with a phone call you're not sure you're allowed to make and a court date you don't understand? That's a completely different set of rules, a different timeline, and honestly, an even more dangerous set of mistakes that I see people make constantly. Mistakes that can turn a temporary situation into a permanent one. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens after detention, what your rights actually are inside that system, and what almost nobody explains clearly in the next video. So if today's video mattered to you, that one is going to matter just as much, if not more. Until then, stay informed, stay calm, and make sure the people you love know exactly what to do the next time someone knocks.